we were talking about stuff. So this happened today because I was actually watching. This randomly put on the Ultimate Warrior documentary from Coliseum Video on Peacock from 1989, and they were going through the rivalries. Going, Hercules first in '88. Then he beats, you mentioned earlier in the podcast, beat Honky in '88 as well too at SummerSlam. And it's funny because I had discussed this actually with Rob and DJ on my other podcast prior. I might have actually been on the show too. Also, we're talking about on the podcast when we did the watch along between Mega Powers, Mega Bucks, and we were discussing Honky and his title reign as IC champion that year, 14 months by the way, and we were talking about him being how this title reign, if you know the history of wrestling, it becomes more and more grossly underrated. Because Honky's not a great wrestler by no means. No one's going to sit and tell you Honky is a great technical specimen. But if you look at that entire year and 2 months of champion, and where that company was at that time also too, especially, I can argue that title reign would put him in a top 5 list of IC champions in history of the company. You came to me and, as Duke always does, one-ups me more. What did you say? What did you say to me about when I said top 5? What do you say about Honky's?
It's the absolute best.
And
there is not a greater title reign. I didn't tell you this part, so you're hearing this for the first time.
Okay.
Because he made the Ultimate Warrior. See, the Honky Tonk Man, not only was he a great champion who got himself over, when it was time to get somebody else over by passing the belt over, he did it in such a way that no one has ever forgotten that match. And it was only a few seconds, right? It was less than a minute, wasn't it? Or close enough? Something
21
like that.
seconds.
21 seconds. So when you think about that, here's a guy that got himself as over as he possibly could as the IC champion. And then when it came time to make somebody, he takes a guy who had failed in Mid-South under Bill Watts, who had failed in Global Wrestling Federation as a Dingo Warrior. Everyone just saw that he had a good body and a good look. He comes into the WWF and he was failing, but Vince McMahon wanted to stick with him. And over a few months, people really started to respond to the music and the presentation because he was just weird.
Elvis.
And then it's like, you know what? Let's see what we can do with this.
And it started as a babyface too. Remember the '86 started as a babyface? That didn't work.
It didn't work.
But Jimmy Hart. That's the end of the day.
Yep. So I think Honky Tonk Man and his IC run, no one has been more significant.
To your point,
especially in passing the title off.
To your point, when you mentioned that, and that actually is a fantastic puppet warrior, I'll add you more to that to make your point even better. Not only did he make Warrior, you can argue he polished off Savage.
Oh, absolutely.
The world title because that feud.
Yeah.
That turned Savage from a big. Now, granted, I'm not saying he made. I'm not gonna go say he made Savage because Savage was a main man at that point. It was on the way up anyway.
Sure.
But that feud turned Savage from heel to face, and that was the feud that segued for him from Savage Honky to the world title.
Yep.
So you can argue.
You could argue he helped the Hart Foundation too.
Yeah.
You can argue that too. So here we go with a faction where he helped get some of his faction buddies over.
And what I find amazing about Honky in that era too, in that year, is that the biggest heel in the company in '87 was obviously Andre the Giant because of Hulk and Andre. That's easy though. That's easy picking. So you know what I mean? Whatever. We can.
And that was only with like one guy. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But
for Honky to get the attention he got, from Andre.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the record, him getting the title number 1 was a lot of luck because Ricky Steamboat was a champion at that time.
Yep.
And he wanted time off to spend time with his family because he had a kid. And Vince said, I can't do that and have me be champion. So I don't think the plan was Honky to be the champion long term.
No, but it worked.
And he took it and ran with it. And that Savage Honky feud, if I told you right now, all-time Randy Savage feud in the history of his life, I don't care. Whatever company, Mid-South, WWE, WCW, that's top 5 easy. Honky and Savage.
So here we go again with Honky getting other people over.
Mega Powers gets set up in that same feud also too.
Yeah.
For the first time. Because he pushed, remember he pushed Elizabeth.
Yep.
Just saying.
He had to be somebody to do that.
Also kind of made Brutus Beefcake also a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I won't go so far as say he's number 1 because ultimately you got the work, like to me, I would put Warrior's 2 title reigns higher because Warrior was that fucking huge.
Yeah, but Warrior didn't make anybody.
He kind of, I don't think he made Rick Rude, but he definitely puts a lot of polish on Rick Rude. Yeah, Ruby, the only one I would say is probably, yeah, you had a point there.
He didn't make anybody.
Right.
See,
because Andre
not great unless you can make somebody.
Right. He feuded Andre, and Andre's made man ready. He feuded with other guys that already made ready.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good point. That's actually
he did not make anybody. And that's why they had to get the belt
That's
off.
a good point. That's a great point, actually. I actually agree with that.
Honky made Warrior. He made that guy.
To me, The Miz is probably top 3, if not greatest ice champion.
Easily.
I think Savage's 1 year, from winning against Tito in February '86.
Well, the whole year Savage make during that run?
So who do you make? I don't think he made anybody, but
didn't make anybody.
Different time though, too. Also, I mean,
I don't know, man. Honky did it.
He feuded with Jake actually. So technically, Jake's face turn came through Savage's. He feuded Savage.
True.
Steamboat kind of actually no. Savage made Steamboat in some ways too.
He didn't make Steamboat. Steamboat was already made.
Right, but I think him getting over the IC champion, the whole
I think they made each other with that match.
Right, I agree.
You know, but that was one match. I can't even say that.
I can't disagree with doing Honky though. Like I put him top 3.
Yeah, he's number 1 for me. He's definitely number 1.
I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah,
like people are getting so like, oh, but he can't wrestle. You're not paying attention. It's not about that. It's about
that man was an enhancement talent, and he did his job.
And that dude got so much heat, not just because he was a bad guy, not because he was Jimmy Hart, but also Elvis only died 10 years before that.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't understand how big Elvis was even 10 years later coming out of that, and to be an Elvis impersonator and to mock Elvis Presley,
mocking him,
that's sports entertainment. Honky Tonk Man was literally sports entertainment.
Yep.
So I can't disagree with you on that. Actually,
see. Now listen, I got a question.